The forest behind my house wasn't just a bunch of trees. It was my whole world. Every path, every mossy rock, every gurgling stream felt like an old friend. I spent countless hours there, my imagination running wild with every rustle of leaves and every bird's song. It was a giant green playground where I could be anyone I wanted to be. A brave explorer, a silent tracker, or just a kid enjoying the quiet. The air always smelled fresh and earthy, a mix of pine needles and damp soil that was my favorite scent in the whole world. I loved how the sunlight peeked through the tall branches, making dancing patterns on the forest floor. Sometimes I'd lie down and just watch the clouds drift by, feeling the cool earth beneath me. Other days, I'd climb my favorite oak tree, its rough bark a familiar comfort against my hands. From its highest branch, I could see over the rooftops of our neighborhood and into the endless sea of green that stretched out beyond. It was a place where worries faded away, and all that mattered was the whisper of the wind and the gentle hum of nature. My dog Buster, a scruffy terrier mix with floppy ears and an endless supply of energy, was always by my side. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. He loved the forest as much as I did, his tail wagging furiously as he sniffed every bush and chased every squirrel. We explored every nook and cranny together, sharing secrets with the trees and making up our own adventures. The forest was our special place, a sanctuary where we felt truly happy and wonderfully free. It was the perfect backdrop for all our childhood dreams and a place I thought I knew like the back of my hand. Even though I knew the forest so well, there were always new corners to discover. One bright morning, the sun was shining like a happy yellow ball in the sky, and the air was crisp and cool. It felt like a perfect day for a grand adventure. I woke up with a tingle of excitement, a feeling that today was different. Instead of heading to our usual spots, I decided we would go somewhere new, somewhere Buster and I had never explored before. I wanted to see what mysteries lay hidden in the parts of the woods I hadn't yet touched. "Come on, Buster," I called, grabbing his leash. He barked happily, his tail thumping against the floor, already knowing it was time for an outing. We packed a small bag with water and a snack, ready for a longer journey than usual. The familiar path soon gave way to thicker undergrowth. We pushed through thorny bushes and stepped over fallen logs, going deeper than I had ever dared. The trees here were even taller, their branches knitting together like a giant green roof, making the sunlight dapple the ground in new and interesting ways. The sounds changed too. The chirping of familiar birds was replaced by different calls I didn't recognize. It felt wilder, more untouched. Every step felt like a discovery. Buster's nose was working overtime, sniffing at every new scent, his body language telling me he was just as excited as I was. We followed a faint deer trail, hardly visible through the leaves, winding our way further and further into the heart of the forest. My heart beat a little faster with each step, filled with the thrill of the unknown. I wondered what incredible things we might find today. We had been walking for a long time, enjoying the quiet adventure, when something suddenly changed the peaceful feeling. One moment, the air smelled of fresh leaves and damp earth, just as it should in a deep forest. The next, a truly awful smell crashed into my nose, making me gasp. It wasn't just a little bad. It was the kind of smell that made your eyes water and your stomach do a funny flip. I stopped dead in my tracks, my brow furrowed. "What is that, Buster?" I mumbled, even though I knew he couldn't answer. He stopped too, his ears perked up, and his nose twitched wildly. The smell was like nothing I had ever encountered in the woods before. It was like old, rotten garbage left out in the hot sun for days, mixed with something else. Something wilder, maybe a bit meaty, but also damp and very, very old. It was hard to put my finger on it, but it was definitely not natural for a clean forest. It hung heavy in the air, a thick, invisible cloud that seemed to cling to everything. I wrinkled my nose, trying to breathe shallowly, but it was no use. The smell seeped into my clothes, into my hair, and felt like it was even getting into my mouth. Buster let out a low whine, a sound he only made when he was really uncomfortable. He usually loved every smell in the forest, but this one was clearly different. He looked up at me with wide, worried eyes, pulling a little on his leash, wanting to turn around and go the other way. I felt a strange mix of disgust and a growing curiosity. What could possibly make such a terrible, overwhelming stench in the middle of this beautiful, wild place? The terrible smell clung to us, a heavy, unseen blanket. My mind raced, trying to figure out what could cause such an awful stench. Was it a dead animal? A very, very big one, perhaps. But even the scent of a fox or a deer that hadn't made it through the winter wasn't this powerful. Wrong. This was different, almost like something ancient and forgotten. I looked around, my eyes scanning the trees and the ground, hoping to spot a clue. But all I saw was the familiar green and brown of the forest. Buster, usually so brave and eager, was clearly not happy. He kept his nose low to the ground, sniffing with short, sharp breaths, then pulling back as if the smell burned his nostrils. He let out another soft whine, a sound that twisted my heart a little. He tugged gently on his leash, not with his usual playful tug, but a firm, steady pull, guiding me in the opposite direction from where the smell seemed strongest. His body was stiff, and his tail was tucked between his legs, a sure sign that he was truly scared. "Easy, boy," I whispered, though my voice sounded a bit shaky. I wanted to comfort him, but I also couldn't shake off my own wonder. What if this was something amazing, something no one had ever found before? The fear in Buster's eyes was real, though. He looked up at me again, his big brown eyes begging me to turn back. It was a tough choice. Listen to Buster's fear and go home, or follow my own curiosity to find out what made such a powerful, disgusting smell. My heart thumped a little faster, torn between wanting to be safe and wanting to solve this big, stinky mystery. My curiosity won. Even with Buster's worried whines and tugs, the mystery of the smell was too strong to ignore. "It's okay, boy. We'll just go a little closer," I whispered, trying to sound brave for both of us. I held Buster's leash tighter, and with a deep breath, we started to move towards the source of the terrible odor. It was a strange journey, with Buster still pulling against me, his body low to the ground, but my grip was firm. We left the faint deer trail and pushed into an even thicker part of the woods. The ground was uneven, covered with layers of crunchy, old leaves and moss. We stepped over fallen tree trunks, slippery with green slime, and pushed through tangled bushes that snagged at my clothes. Every few steps, I had to stop and wait for Buster to untangle himself from a thorny vine. The deeper we went, the more difficult the path became. Broken branches snapped under our feet with loud cracks echoing in the quiet forest. The smell grew stronger with every step, filling my nose and making me want to pinch it shut. It was like walking into a cloud of something truly foul. Buster kept sniffing, but his sniffs were quick and unhappy. He kept glancing back at me, his eyes wide and full of a fear I rarely saw in him. He walked close to my leg, pressing against me as if seeking comfort, but still moving forward because I was leading him. The air grew stiller here, the sounds of birds seemed to fade, and a strange quiet settled over the woods, broken only by our footsteps and the soft, worried sounds from Buster. What could be waiting for us in this silent, stinky part of the forest? With every step we took, pushing through the thick, thorny bushes, the smell became even more powerful. It wasn't just a bad smell anymore. It was like a wall of stink that hit me full in the face. My nose felt like it was burning, and I could taste the foulness in the back of my throat. It was so strong that it actually made my eyes water a little, as if I had just chopped a big, strong onion. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision, but the air felt thick and heavy with the awful odor. Buster was now almost dragging his belly on the ground, whimpering softly. He kept his head down, but his little sniffs were still quick and worried. He didn't pull back as much anymore, almost as if the smell had made him too weak to fight it. His whole body trembled a little, and I could feel his fear through the leash. I tried to talk to him, to tell him it would be okay, but the words caught in my throat because of the overwhelming stench. The forest around us seemed to hold its breath. The usual forest sounds were completely gone. No birds chirped, no squirrels chattered, no leaves rustled in the breeze. It was strangely silent, as if even nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The only sounds were our careful footsteps and Buster's soft, scared whimpers. I covered my mouth and nose with my shirt, but it didn't help much. The smell was everywhere, a constant, disgusting presence. It felt like we were getting very close to whatever was making this horrible stink, and a cold shiver ran down my back. What if it was still alive? What if it was watching us? We moved slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, the awful smell making it hard to breathe. Then, through a gap in the thick trees, I saw it. My heart jumped. It was something big, really big and completely out of place in the natural forest. My eyes widened as I stared. Right in front of us, nestled in a small clearing, was a huge pile of dirt and rocks. It wasn't just a small mound. It was like a small hill, much taller than me and wider than our shed back home. It was covered with fresh dirt, dark and rich, mixed with larger stones and broken branches. It looked like someone or something had dug a very, very big hole and then covered it up again. This wasn't a natural pile of leaves or a beaver dam. This was clearly made by something. I had seen lots of animal dens in the forest before. Foxholes, badger tunnels, even bear caves. But none of them were anything like this. This pile was enormous, much too big for any animal I knew. It looked like a giant had just swept up a huge amount of earth and piled it there. The terrible smell, which had been so strong, seemed to be coming right from this mound. It hung over the pile like a dark cloud, even thicker here. Buster let out a low, guttural growl, a sound I rarely heard from him. He wasn't just whining anymore. He was truly scared, his hackles raised, staring at the strange dirt hill with wide, terrified eyes. He pressed himself against my leg, trembling, clearly wanting to turn and run. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This was more than just a bad smell now. This was something truly mysterious and perhaps dangerous. The strange pile of dirt and rocks held my attention, but my eyes soon drifted to the trees around it. That's when I saw something else that made my jaw drop. All around the clearing, on the trunks of several large trees, were deep, angry-looking claw marks. They weren't like the little scratches a squirrel might make, or even the rough marks from a bear sharpening its claws. These were huge, long gouges in the bark, some as thick as my fingers and reaching far up the trees. I walked closer to one of the trees, ignoring the terrible smell for a moment, and traced the outline of a mark with my finger. The wood was splintered and torn, showing the raw, lighter wood beneath the dark bark. It looked like whatever made these marks had used a lot of force, really digging in. There were 5 distinct lines in each set of marks, just like a hand with very long, strong claws. They were much too big for any animal I knew that lived in these woods. A bear's claws were big, but these were different. Longer, wider, and spaced out in a way that didn't look like a bear's paw at all. Buster let out another low growl, pushing his head into my leg, clearly wanting me to move away from the tree. He seemed to understand that these marks were a warning, a sign of something powerful and maybe even dangerous. My mind raced. What kind of creature could make such marks? It would have to be very big, very strong, and have claws that were incredibly sharp. The claw marks, combined with the enormous pile and the overwhelming stench, made my heart beat even faster. This wasn't just a mystery. It was becoming a real puzzle, and a scary one at that. The giant claw marks on the trees were enough to make my mind spin. But then I noticed something on the ground near the edge of the clearing. The soil here was soft and muddy from a recent rain, and pressed into it were several giant footprints. They were clear as day, much bigger than my own feet, even bigger than my dad's hiking boots. I knelt down, ignoring the terrible smell for a moment, to get a closer look. The prints looked just like a human foot, with 5 toes and a distinct heel. But they were incredibly long and wide. I placed my own shoe next to one, and my shoe looked tiny in comparison, like a child's toy. These footprints were easily twice the size of my foot, maybe even more. They were pressed deep into the mud, showing that whatever made them was very, very heavy. My heart started to pound even harder in my chest. First the huge dirt pile, then the giant claw marks, and now these enormous, human-like footprints. It was too much to be a coincidence. This wasn't a bear or a wolf or any animal I had ever learned about in school or seen in a book. This was something else entirely. The prints seemed to lead from the deeper woods, right up to the strange mound, and then away again. Buster was still whimpering, his body shaking. He sniffed at the edge of one of the footprints, then quickly pulled his head back, letting out a soft bark of alarm. He looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, as if begging me to understand the danger we were in. All the stories I'd heard, the old tales whispered around campfires, suddenly rushed into my mind. Could it be? Could it really be the creature people only talked about in legends? The thought sent a chill straight through me. The giant footprints had left me completely stunned, but Buster's reaction quickly brought me back to the scary reality of the moment. After sniffing the edge of one print, he suddenly pulled back, his body stiff. Then he let out a series of sharp, quick barks aimed directly at the huge pile of dirt. These weren't his happy, playful barks. These were barks full of fear and a low, rumbling growl that came from deep in his chest. His barks echoed loudly in the strangely silent forest, making my own heart leap into my throat. Buster rarely barked like this, especially not at something he couldn't see clearly. He usually only barked at squirrels he wanted to chase or other dogs he wanted to play with. But this was different. He was truly scared, and his bark sounded like a warning. His tail was tucked so tightly between his legs it almost disappeared, and his fur stood up along his back, making him look bigger and bristly. He continued to bark, a frantic, worried sound, pulling hard on his leash, trying to get away from the mound. His eyes were fixed on the pile, wide with terror, as if he expected something to jump out at any second. He looked up at me, then back at the pile, then back at me again, as if begging me to understand the danger and run. His barks were so urgent, so filled with a deep, primal fear, that they made the hair on my arms stand up. Buster was telling me, in the clearest way he knew how, that we were in trouble. He was really, truly worried, and his fear was quickly becoming my own. Buster's scared barks were like a loud alarm going off in my head. All the strange things we had seen, the giant dirt pile, the huge claw marks on the trees, the enormous human-like footprints, and that terrible, terrible smell. They all clicked into place. Suddenly, stories I had only heard around campfires or read in dusty old books rushed into my mind. Stories about Bigfoot. I remembered hearing about a giant, ape-like creature that lived deep in the forests, a shy and mysterious beast that walked on two legs and left enormous footprints. People said it was covered in thick fur and had a smell that was like nothing else on earth. Until now, I had always thought these were just fun stories, make-believe tales to tell in the dark. But standing there, in that quiet, stinky clearing, with Buster barking frantically at the strange mound, it all felt very real. Could this be it? Could this be where Bigfoot lived? Or, even scarier, could this be where it buried something? The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool forest air. The pile was too big for a regular animal den, and the smell was too strong to be just a dead deer. And those footprints, those massive, human-like prints, matched the descriptions of Bigfoot exactly. My mind raced, putting all the pieces together. This wasn't just some weird animal thing. This was something truly extraordinary. Something that many people didn't believe existed. Buster's barks grew louder, more desperate, as if he could feel the presence of something huge and unseen nearby. He was telling me that we weren't just exploring anymore. We were in a place where a legendary creature might call home, or worse, a place where it kept its secrets hidden. The thought of Bigfoot made my skin prickle. But it was the smell that truly made me feel uneasy. It was so incredibly awful. A thick, sticky stench that felt like it was coating the inside of my nose and throat. I tried to breathe through my mouth, but even that didn't help much. My stomach started to feel a little queasy, and I could feel a faint headache beginning to throb behind my eyes. It was a smell that wasn't just unpleasant. It felt wrong, unnatural, like something that shouldn't exist in the fresh, clean air of the forest. Buster's barks had turned into a low, continuous growl, still aimed at the dirt pile, his body stiff with fear. He was telling me that this wasn't just a simple animal den or a pile of rubbish. This was something far more serious. His animal instincts were screaming danger, and his fear was catching. I knew, deep down, that whatever was causing this terrible smell, whatever had made those giant marks and left those huge footprints, was not small. It was something big, very big, and definitely unusual. The quiet of the forest, broken only by Buster's growls and my own fast heartbeat, made the situation even scarier. It was as if all the other creatures had sensed the danger and fled, leaving us alone with this mysterious, stinky presence. I gripped Buster's leash tightly, my knuckles white. My mind kept returning to the Bigfoot stories, the descriptions of its powerful, unique scent. This smell, this overwhelming, sickening odor, felt like it fit those stories perfectly. I had found something truly extraordinary, and I knew I had to be very careful. Despite the fear that made my hands tremble and Buster's frantic growls, my curiosity was still a powerful pull. The idea that Bigfoot might be real, right here in my forest, was too big to just walk away from. I had to know more. I had to see what was truly causing that sickening smell. Taking another deep, shaky breath, I pulled Buster gently but firmly. "Just a little closer, boy," I whispered, my voice barely audible over his continuous growling. He resisted for a moment, digging his paws into the soft earth. But then slowly, reluctantly, he followed me. My heart was pounding like a drum against my ribs, and I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. The air was so heavy with the terrible stench that I decided to hold my breath for as long as I could. With my breath held tight, I took 2 slow, careful steps forward, then another 2. We were now very close to the edge of the enormous dirt pile. It loomed over us, much bigger up close, a dark, silent mound in the quiet clearing. I squinted my eyes, trying to see past the swirling, invisible cloud of odor that hung around it. What exactly was buried under all that earth and rock? Was it something dangerous? Something ancient? My mind raced, with questions, each one more frightening than the last. I peered intently at the top of the mound, desperately wanting to catch a glimpse of whatever secret it held, hoping to find the answer to the mystery of the overwhelming smell. As I peered over the edge of the enormous dirt pile, still holding my breath against the awful smell, my eyes finally landed on something truly shocking. Right there, poking out from beneath a layer of fresh earth and tangled roots, was a patch of fur. It wasn't the soft, brown fur of a deer, or the coarse black fur of a bear. This was different. It was dark, almost black, but looked matted and dull, as if it had been buried for a very long time. The fur was incredibly thick, much thicker than any animal coat I had ever seen. It looked strong and coarse, like a heavy blanket made of many layers of hair. There was a strange reddish-brown tint to some parts of it, as if it had once been a different color or had changed from being in the dirt. It looked very old, almost ancient, and seemed to be part of something much larger hidden beneath the mound. My breath hitched, and I almost forgot to hold it. This fur was exactly like the descriptions of Bigfoot's coat, thick, dark, and shaggy. It was clear that whatever this fur belonged to, it was a very large creature. Buster, still growling softly, pushed his nose towards the fur, then quickly recoiled with a loud sniff and a shake of his head, as if the smell coming from it was too much even for him. He let out a sharp, scared bark, pulling even harder on his leash. The sight of the fur, combined with the overwhelming stench and Buster's frantic reaction, made everything click into place. It wasn't just a mysterious pile anymore. It was a burial site. And that fur, that thick, dark, ancient-looking fur, could only belong to one creature that fit all the other clues. My heart pounded with a mix of terror and a strange, wild excitement. I had truly found something unbelievable. My eyes were glued to the patch of dark, ancient fur peeking from the mound. Every part of me screamed to reach out, to touch it, to feel the texture of what I believed was Bigfoot's hair. I knew, deep down, that I shouldn't. Touching something like that, something so mysterious and possibly dangerous, was a bad idea. What if it was covered in germs? What if it was a trap? What if whatever it belonged to was still nearby, watching? But my curiosity was a powerful force, pushing against my fear. It was like a magnet pulling my hand closer, even though my brain was yelling, "No!" I wanted to confirm it, to feel the rough, matted strands between my fingers, to truly believe this unbelievable discovery. I imagined pulling a small piece off, a tiny sample to show everyone, proof of what I had found. Yet, I didn't move. My hand hovered in the air, trembling slightly, just inches from the dark fur. I just stared at it, my eyes taking in every detail, the way the light caught the reddish-brown parts, how thick and dense it looked, how it seemed to be woven into the very earth of the pile. It was so real, so tangible, and yet so utterly impossible. Buster's urgent barks continued, a constant reminder of the danger. He tugged harder on his leash, trying to pull me away from the strange mound and its ancient secret. His fear was a cold splash of water on my burning curiosity. I knew he was right. I shouldn't touch it. It was too risky. So I just stood there, frozen, staring at the strange fur, the terrible smell filling my senses, a silent witness to something truly extraordinary. My gaze was fixed on the strange fur, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing, when Buster's behavior suddenly became much more urgent. His low growls turned into sharp, loud barks that echoed through the silent woods. He wasn't just whimpering or pulling gently anymore. He was barking with all his might, a frantic, desperate sound, and tugging on his leash with surprising strength. "Woof, woof, grr," he barked, his body shaking as he yanked at the leash, pulling me away from the enormous dirt pile. He spun around, trying to turn me back the way we came, his eyes wide with a terror that was impossible to ignore. It was clear as day. Buster was telling me, in his own doggy way, that we needed to leave. Right now. His barks weren't just about being scared anymore. They were a direct command. He was warning me that staying here was truly dangerous. It was as if he could sense something I couldn't, something unseen and powerful that was lurking nearby, perhaps even watching us. His frantic energy was so strong that it finally broke through my frozen curiosity. The thought of what could be making him so utterly terrified, what could be connected to that fur and that smell, sent a fresh wave of fear through me. I looked from Buster's panicked face to the dark, mysterious fur on the mound, then back to my dog. He was my best friend. He had never been this scared before. I knew I had to trust him. He was telling me that our adventure had gone too far, that we were no longer safe. It was time to go. Buster's frantic barks finally snapped me out of my stunned state. My mind raced, no longer filled with simple curiosity, but with a growing, icy fear. The sight of the strange fur, the terrible smell, the giant footprints, and Buster's absolute terror. It all pointed to one terrifying possibility. A cold shiver snaked its way down my spine, starting at the back of my neck and spreading through my whole body. What if Bigfoot wasn't just a story? What if it was real? And what if it was still nearby? The thought made my breath catch in my throat. This was its territory, its secret burial place. What if it didn't want anyone to find it? What if it was watching us right now? Hidden behind one of the thick trees, angry that we had stumbled upon its secret. The quiet of the forest suddenly felt heavy. No longer peaceful, but watchful. Every shadow seemed to hide something. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a giant footstep. I quickly scanned the trees around the clearing, my eyes darting from trunk to trunk, trying to see any movement, any sign of a large, hairy creature. My heart hammered against my ribs, making my chest ache. Buster pulled harder on his leash, his barks now mixed with desperate yelps. He wasn't asking anymore. He was demanding that we leave. His fear was so strong, so clear, that I finally gave in. My own brave explorer spirit had vanished, replaced by a primal urge to run, to get away from this mysterious and dangerous place. We had seen enough, more than enough. It was time to go, and fast. My heart pounding, I knew Buster was right. We had to leave. But I couldn't just turn my back and run. Every fiber of my being wanted to bolt. But a strange caution made me move slowly, carefully. With Buster still barking and tugging on his leash, I began to back away from the enormous dirt pile. My eyes never left the mound. I kept watching it, half expecting something to suddenly erupt from the earth, or for a huge, hairy figure to step out from behind the trees. The dark fur, the unsettling silence, and the knowledge of those giant footprints made me feel incredibly exposed. Every shadow seemed to move. Every branch looked like a watchful eye. It felt like we were being watched, and I didn't want to make any sudden moves that might draw attention to us. Step by slow step, I retreated, pulling Buster with me. His bark softened into whimpers, but he continued to press against my leg, his body still trembling. The awful smell was still everywhere, clinging to the air, to my clothes, to my hair. It felt like a part of the place, a warning that this was no ordinary forest clearing. Even as we moved further away, the stench didn't seem to lessen. It was a constant, sickening reminder of the unbelievable thing we had found. My legs felt heavy, but I forced myself to keep moving backward, carefully placing my feet so as not to trip over roots or fallen branches. I just wanted to get out of that clearing, away from that pile, and away from the terrifying possibility that Bigfoot itself might be lurking just out of sight. The forest, which I once loved as my safe playground, now felt like a place of hidden danger and ancient secrets. We continued to back away, my eyes still fixed on the strange mound, Buster pulling me steadily. Just as we reached the edge of the clearing, where the thick bushes began to close in again, I heard it. A soft but distinct crunching sound came from directly behind us, deeper in the woods. It wasn't the small snap of a squirrel or a bird. This was a heavy, deliberate sound, like something big stepping on dry leaves and twigs. Crunch, crunch. It sounded like a very large animal, or maybe even something that walked on 2 feet, moving slowly, carefully, just out of sight. My blood ran cold. My heart, which was already pounding, now felt like it was trying to escape my chest, froze. My breath caught in my throat. Had it been there all along, watching us? Was it now coming closer? The terrible smell, which I thought had lessened a little as we backed away, seemed to press in on us again, stronger than ever. Buster let out a sharp, high-pitched yelp, a sound of pure terror, and pulled with all his might on the leash, dragging me forward. He had heard it too, and he knew exactly what it meant. The crunching sound happened again, closer this time, and I could almost feel the ground tremble a tiny bit. It was unmistakable. Something very large was moving in the silent forest, and it was heading our way. My mind screamed with a terrifying thought that Bigfoot was real, and it was now aware of us. The fear was overwhelming, pushing away all curiosity. We had to run. We had to get away, right now, before whatever was making that sound came out of the shadows. The crunching sound behind us was the final push. All thoughts of curiosity vanished, replaced by pure, raw fear. I didn't dare look back. My body screamed at me to run, and I listened. Gripping Buster's leash tightly, I spun around and we bolted. We ran as fast as our legs could carry us, crashing through the thick bushes and stumbling over roots and fallen logs. Buster, usually the one leading the charge, was now pulling me with a frantic energy I'd never seen. He was faster than me, his little legs a blur as he dragged me away from the terrible clearing. I could hear my own breath coming in ragged gasps, my lungs burning. But I didn't stop. The only thing that mattered was putting as much distance as possible between us and that strange, stinky pile. The terrible smell seemed to follow us, a lingering cloud of foulness that made me want to gag. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, sounded like the giant creature was right behind us, getting closer with each stride. I imagined its huge, hairy form bursting through the trees, its eyes fixed on us. The thought spurred me on, pushing me to run even harder. My legs ached, my chest burned, and my heart felt like it was going to explode, but I couldn't stop. We didn't follow any path. We just ran, aiming for where I thought the familiar parts of the forest lay. Buster was a furry blur beside me, his little yelps of terror spurring me on. We ran from the overwhelming smell, from the giant footprints, from the claw marks, and from the terrifying idea that a legendary creature was real and possibly angry. We ran for our lives, away from the deepest, darkest secret of the woods. We didn't slow down. My legs pumped, burning with effort. And Buster, still pulling like a small, furry motor, seemed to find endless energy in his fear. We crashed through the undergrowth, no longer caring about thorns or tripping hazards. All that mattered was getting away. The sounds of the forest blurred around us, replaced by the frantic thud of our feet and our ragged breaths. It felt like forever, a never-ending race through the dense trees. My lungs ached with every gasp of air, and sweat stung my eyes. I could still smell the terrible stench, fainter now, but it still clung to me, a phantom reminder of what we had left behind. I kept glancing sideways, expecting to see a huge, dark shape emerging from the shadows. But thankfully, nothing appeared. Finally, just when I thought my legs would give out, I saw it. The faint, familiar light of the edge of the woods, where the trees thinned and our neighborhood began. A surge of fresh hope, mixed with utter exhaustion, pushed me forward. We stumbled out of the thickest part of the forest, onto a more open path, and kept running. We didn't stop until we were almost home, our chests heaving, our hearts pounding like crazy drums. We leaned against the big oak tree at the edge of my backyard, panting, trying to catch our breath. Buster was still trembling, but he looked up at me with wide, relieved eyes, letting out a soft whimper of exhaustion. We were safe. We had escaped. But the images of the giant pile, the strange fur, and the terrifying crunching sound were burned into my mind, and the faint, awful smell still lingered in my nose. Still panting and shaky, Buster and I stumbled through the back door. My mom was in the kitchen, and my dad was reading the newspaper in the living room. As soon as they saw us, their faces changed. I must have looked a mess. My clothes were dirty, my hair was tangled with twigs, and my face was probably pale with fear. Buster was still trembling, pressing close to my legs. "What happened?" Mom asked, her voice full of worry. I tried to tell them, but the words tumbled out too fast, all mixed up. The woods. Deep in. A pile. Huge. And a smell. Oh, the smell. And fur. Big footprints. And a crunching sound. I pointed frantically towards the forest behind the house, my voice a little high-pitched. My parents exchanged a look. Dad put down his paper and came over, kneeling down to my level. "Slow down, champ. Take a deep breath. What did you find?" I took a big gulp of air and tried to explain everything clearly. The awful, sickening smell, the giant mound of dirt and rocks, the huge claw marks on the trees, the enormous human-like footprints, the strange, thick fur, and finally, the scary crunching sound that made us run. I told them how terrified Buster had been, and how I thought it might be Bigfoot. As I spoke, Their faces grew more and more serious. Mom's hand went to her mouth, and Dad's brow furrowed into a deep frown. They didn't laugh or tell me I was imagining things, which surprised me. Instead, they looked at each other with a worried expression I didn't often see. It was clear that my story, and the way Buster was still shaking, had truly unsettled them. They knew something big and scary had happened. After I finished my story, my parents sat in silence for a moment, still looking very worried. My mom hugged me tight, checking me over for any scratches or injuries, while Buster nestled his head into my dad's lap, still whimpering softly. Then my dad spoke, his voice serious. "This sounds like a very unusual discovery, son. And it sounds like you and Buster had a very scary time." He paused, looking at my mom, who nodded slowly. "I think we should tell the park rangers about this. They know a lot about the forest and all the animals in it. If there's something big and strange out there, they should know." I felt a mix of relief and a little disappointment. Relief that they believed me and were taking it seriously. But a small part of me wanted to keep the secret, just for me and Buster. But Dad was right. If it was something dangerous, or even something truly important, the rangers needed to know. "What will they do?" I asked, my voice still a bit shaky. "They'll go out and investigate," Dad explained. "They'll look for the pile, the footprints, and try to figure out what's causing that terrible smell. It's their job to keep the forest safe for everyone and to understand what lives in it." My mom added, "And until they do, no more going deep into the woods, okay? Stick to the paths you know well, and always with Buster." I nodded quickly, already knowing that I wouldn't want to go back to that scary part of the forest anytime soon. The idea of the rangers going there made me feel a little safer, knowing that grown-ups would be looking into this big, stinky mystery. The next morning, after a restless night filled with dreams of giant shadows and terrible smells, 2 park rangers came to our house. They listened carefully as I told my story again, drawing a rough map of where I thought the clearing was. They were kind and serious, writing things down in their little notebooks. Buster, usually friendly with strangers, stayed close to me, letting out a low growl when I pointed towards the forest. With my dad leading the way and me pointing out the general direction, the rangers headed into the woods. I wanted to go with them so badly, to show them exactly where everything was. But my parents said no. "It's too risky, honey," Mom said, and Dad agreed. So, Buster and I watched from the edge of the yard as they disappeared into the trees. It felt like forever until they came back. When they finally did, hours later, their faces looked tired and a little puzzled. They walked up to my dad, shaking their heads. "We searched for hours, sir," one ranger said. "Your son gave us good directions, and we went deeper than we usually do. But we couldn't find any large dirt pile, no unusual claw marks, and definitely no strong, strange smell like he described." My heart sank. But it was there. I insisted, my voice cracking. "I saw it. Buster saw it." Buster let out a small bark, as if agreeing with me. The other ranger smiled kindly. "Sometimes the forest can play tricks on us, son. Things can look bigger or scarier when you're surprised, and smells can travel far." They looked at my dad with a shrug. They hadn't found anything. My amazing, terrifying discovery was gone. When the rangers told us they found nothing, a heavy disappointment settled over me. They tried to be kind, saying things like, "Sometimes your imagination can run wild in the deep woods," or, "It might have been an old animal's den that just looked bigger because of the light." One ranger even suggested the smell could have been a dead deer, and the fur just matted leaves. But I knew in my heart that they were wrong. It wasn't just an old animal's den. I had seen plenty of those. This was a huge, unnatural mound, and the claw marks were too big, too deep, too distinctly shaped to be from any normal creature. And those footprints, they were clearly not from a bear or a deer. They were like giant human feet. Most of all, that smell. It wasn't just a regular bad smell. It was something truly unique and awful. Something that made Buster, my brave little dog, shake with fear. Buster, who was now resting quietly beside me, let out a soft sigh, as if he too was disappointed that no one believed us. He had been there, he had smelled it, and he had been just as scared as I was. How could they say it was just my imagination? My memories were so clear, so real. I understood why the rangers couldn't find anything. Maybe Bigfoot had covered up its tracks even better, or maybe it had moved its secret burial place. Whatever the reason, I knew what I had seen and smelled. It was much, much more than just an old animal's den. It was a secret, a mystery, and a terrifying encounter that I would never forget. I just wished someone else believed me. Even though the park rangers found nothing and tried to explain it away, that day in the woods never left me. Weeks turned into months, but the images were as clear as if it had happened yesterday. I still think about that huge dirt pile, the claw marks, and especially that terrible, overwhelming smell. It wasn't just a faint memory. It felt real, like a secret part of my mind. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, or when I'm walking past a dumpster on a hot day, I catch a faint whiff of something that reminds me of that awful stench. It's enough to send a shiver down my spine and bring back all the fear and wonder of that afternoon. I can almost feel Buster's trembling body pressed against my leg, hear his frantic barks warning me to run. I know what I saw. My eyes didn't play tricks on me, and my imagination wasn't that powerful. The pile was too big, the footprints too distinct, the fur too strange, and Buster's fear too real for it to be anything less than what I suspected. I truly believe I stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that the world isn't ready to believe. Even now, when I look out at the dark line of trees behind our house, I feel a strange mix of excitement and a little bit of fear. I don't go as deep into the forest anymore, not into the wild, untouched parts. But a part of me always wonders if it's still out there, if the secret burial place is still hidden, and if Bigfoot is still walking through those silent, ancient woods. Even if no one else believed me, and even if the rangers found nothing, I hold one truth in my heart. I believe I found where Bigfoot buries its dead. It sounds like something from a scary movie or a tall tale, but the memory is too strong, too real, to be anything else. All the clues pointed to it. The enormous, unnatural pile, the giant, human-like footprints, the deep claw marks on the trees, and that overpowering, sickening smell that lingered even after we ran away. This wasn't just a place where an animal had died. This was a secret place, full of mystery, hidden deep in the forest where few people ever go. It felt sacred, in a strange, wild way, like a place that was meant to be kept secret by a creature that wanted to stay hidden from the world. The thick, dark fur I saw was like a final piece of a puzzle, fitting perfectly with all the stories I had heard about Bigfoot's shaggy coat. I often think about the quietness of that clearing, broken only by Buster's terrified barks. It was a place untouched by humans, a wild corner of the world where something truly ancient and mysterious could exist. It makes me wonder what other secrets the forest holds. what other creatures might be hiding just out of sight, living lives we can barely imagine. It was a discovery that changed how I see the world. It showed me that even in places I thought I knew well, there could be unbelievable things waiting to be found. A secret burial ground for a legendary beast. It was a story almost too big to tell, but one I knew was true, deep in my bones. That scary day in the forest, even though it ended with no one else believing me, taught me a really big lesson. I used to think I knew a lot about the world, especially about the woods behind my house. I thought I had seen most of what there was to see and understood how things worked. But finding that strange, stinky burial place showed me how wrong I was. It made me realize that there are still so many amazing and unknown things hidden in the world, even in places we think we know well. It's not just in faraway jungles or deep oceans. Sometimes, incredible mysteries are right in our own backyards, just waiting for someone to stumble upon them. Things that don't fit into our school books or what grown-ups tell us. This discovery made the world feel much bigger and more exciting. It's like finding a secret door in your house that you never knew was there. And behind it is a whole new room. I learned that just because you can't see something, or just because nobody else believes it, doesn't mean it isn't real. The forest now holds a deeper magic for me, a sense of wonder that goes beyond what I can see with my eyes. It taught me to always keep my mind open, to look for the hidden wonders, and to trust my own experiences, even if they seem impossible. The world is full of secrets, and some of the best ones are waiting right under our noses. The forest behind my house, once a place of pure joy and simple games, felt different after that day. I still love to walk there with Buster, but now a new feeling mixed with my happiness, a quiet awareness, a sense of something hidden. Every time the wind sighed through the tall pines, I listened more closely. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every rustle in the undergrowth made me pause and wonder. I stuck to the familiar paths, as my parents had asked, and I never ventured deep into the truly wild parts again. But even on the well-worn trails, the forest seemed to hold more secrets than before. The trees stood taller, the air felt thicker with possibility, and I often found myself looking over my shoulder just for a second. It wasn't exactly fear anymore, not the raw terror of that day, but a deep respect for the unknown. Buster felt it too. He still loved his walks, but he was always a little more alert, his nose twitching, his ears swiveling. Sometimes he would stop suddenly, his body stiff, staring into the thick woods with a serious look in his eyes, as if he sensed something I couldn't. He would then look at me, and we would share a silent understanding. We both knew the forest held more than just squirrels and deer. From that day on, my walks in the woods were a quiet adventure, a reminder that the world is full of wonders we don't always see. It was a place of known beauty and unknown mystery, a place where legends might just be real, hidden in plain sight. My walks in the woods are different now, filled with a deeper kind of wonder. I know that some secrets of nature are meant to stay hidden, kept safe from human eyes. The forest has its own ways of keeping its mysteries, of covering its tracks, and of making sure that certain things remain just out of reach. Perhaps that's why the rangers found nothing, and why many people will never believe my story. And that's okay. I don't need everyone to believe me to know what I experienced was real. I was glad I found one of those secrets, even if it was just for a little while. It was a moment, a brief glimpse into a world I never knew existed, right in my own backyard. It was scary, yes, but it was also amazing. It taught me that the world is much more mysterious and exciting than I ever thought. Finding that strange, stinky burial place made me feel like I had been part of something truly special, something few people ever get to see. It was my own personal adventure, a story that only Buster and I truly shared. It reminded me that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and that sometimes the greatest wonders are the ones that remain hidden. So, I keep my secret, a treasure in my mind. The forest continues to whisper its tales, and I listen, knowing that somewhere in its deepest parts, Bigfoot still walks, keeping its ancient secrets buried deep. And I am forever changed by the day I found one of them.